You mentioned a while ago, a few minutes ago, that your rabbi had talked about each of us being a ray in the sunbeam, a sunbeam in the mind of God. This is what the Course in Miracles says. The Course says, you are like a sunbeam, thinking you are separate from other sunbeams. You're like a wave in the ocean, thinking you're separate from other waves. But there's actually no place where one sunbeam stops and another sunbeam starts. There really is no spot where one wave stops and another wave begins. What we have is the thought that we are separate from that which in fact cannot be separate from us. Now, think of the different psychological and emotional orientation. Depending whether I think of myself as one wave separated from all the other waves in the ocean versus my experience of myself, others, and life itself. If I think of myself as a wave that is connected to every other wave.
Yeah.
So if I think of myself as a wave, a little wave in this huge ocean, separate from all the other waves, how can I not live in constant terror that I will be obliterated by another wave? How can I not live in constant terror that I will be annihilated on some level by the hugeness of the ocean? Now, the other possibility, that which arises from truth, is there's no place where I stop and it starts. I'm part of this ocean. I move, it moves. It moves, I move. I'm part of this whole thing. I'm huge. The power of the ocean is in me. And I'm part of the power of the ocean. And there's nothing to fear in the ocean. It is my identity. Which life do you want?
There's a scene in Batman, which I actually saw just a clip of it on YouTube, but one of my students told me about it. It's a scene where Batman is about to destroy Joker forever. And Joker says to Batman, you can't do this. You can't get rid of me, because without me, you're not Batman. Right? Who are you without me? You need me, because that's what makes you a hero. I make you a hero. So your ego is there to make you a hero. And so that's what ego is hoping that you'll say no.
I had been very close with Maury when I was in college. I took every class that he offered. We walked around campus together. We ate meals together. I went to his home. I mean, he was really more like an uncle, to me. And I spent all 4 years in his company. And he made me promise when I graduated that I would stay in touch. And I promised I would. And then I broke that promise for 16 years. While I got tangled in the music business, and then I got into the journalism business. And I advanced very quickly once I got into the journalism business as a sports writer. I had a lot of success early on. I was bounced around, hired to different places. I got on the ESPN radio show, television show, and I was just totally wrapped up in myself, and I reached 37 without ever having called him. And then one night I happened to be flipping the remote control, and there he was on the Nightline program talking to Ted Koppel about what it was like to die. And that was the only way that I even found out that he was sick. So I called him. It's a funny story because I had called Maury Coach back in college. That was my affectation for him. I coach, how you doing, coach, that kind of thing. And when I saw him on Nightline, I decided I would call him up. That was all it was going to be. I was just going to call him up, make a phone call, ease my conscience, and then I guess go back to my busy life. And when I called him up, I had long since forgotten this nickname. And the nurse answered the phone. She handed it to him, and I remember exactly what I said. Hello, Professor Schwartz. My name is Mitch Albom. I was a student of yours in the 70s. I don't know if you remember me. And the first thing he said to me after 16 years was, how come you didn't call me Coach? And so, needless to say, by the end of the conversation, I was going to visit him because guilt is a very powerful motivator. And I was going to visit him one time. That was going to be it. But I was just so taken with the way he was handling his dying from Lou Gehrig's disease and the fact that he couldn't move his legs and could barely move his arms at that point and knew he was going to die, but he was still so vibrant and had so much to say and wasn't at all interested in the things that I was interested in. And I remember going home that night saying, you're 37 years old, you're perfectly healthy, and he's 78 years old and dying, and he seems 10 times more content and happy with his life than you are. And there's something the matter here. And so I began to go back every Tuesday, and one after another, after another, after another. And it turned out to be all the Tuesdays that he had left in his life. And we kind of did this last class together on what's really important in life once you know you're going to die. And wouldn't it be great to have that knowledge now when you're young enough, as I was, healthy enough to maybe change your life and do something about it? But it was never supposed to be a book, Cathy. I mean, it was just an experience. The book came about when he told me one day that he was afraid that he was going to die twice. And I said, what does that mean? And he said, well, first I'm going to die when I die, and then I'm going to die when I realize wherever I am next that my family has to sell the house to pay my bills because of all these bills I've accrued for years, and dying slowly, we don't have the money to pay it. So it was then that I got the idea, well, maybe I could write a book to help him pay his bills. And I didn't tell him that I was going to try to do that because I was afraid, well, if I say that and I go out and then I fail, I'm just going to make his life worse. So I privately went to these different publishers around New York, all while this was all going on. And I said to them, this is kind of an amazing experience as an old man talking to a young man about what matters in life. I don't need a lot of money. Here's exactly the amount that I need. This is how much money he needs. That's what I need. And everybody said no. Everybody said no. Publishers, famous publishers, not interested, boring, depressing. Nobody's going to want to read a book like that. You're a sports writer. One very prestigious publishing house, who I won't mention, told me that I didn't know what a memoir was, and I should come back in 20 years, and maybe I would understand what a memoir was. So I really would have given up, to be honest, Cathy, if it was for me. I would have thought, well, this is a terrible idea. Look at how many people are just spitting at it. Forget it. Okay, I'll go on to something else. But because it was for somebody else, which is a lesson in and of itself, I pushed harder, and I found a publisher who was interested in it. And we were able to come to an agreement a few weeks or more. And I went to him and told him that, hey, all these conversations we're taping and stuff like that. Well, there's a publisher that wants to turn it into a book. And he said, oh, really? Who? And I said, Doubleday. He said, ooh, I heard of them. I said, well, not only that, but they're going to give us some money. I want you to take all the money and pay off your medical bills so you don't have to die twice, And I always say, Cathy, that for me, that was the end of Tuesdays with Morrie, the experience, because I had kind of, come from a place where I was really just looking out for myself and my own career and those kinds of things, to committing to do something that would help somebody else. And at the time had no promise for me. I just wanted to be a sports writer. So for me, this was just okay, this is going to take me some time to go off to left field and do this, but it's worth doing because I can help him. I finally did one nice thing for this man who had done so many nice things for me. So, he never read a word of Tuesdays with Morrie. I didn't start writing it until after he passed away. I wrote it as simply as I could. I didn't want to, embellish it with a lot of heavy-duty words and look at me. I can write about death type of thing. I knew that would be a bad idea, so I just tried to keep it really simple. And so it wasn't supposed to be, Cathy. I mean, all of this is a long answer to your question, but I didn't decide to write that book. It sort of happened, and then I wasn't planning on that book being anything. They printed 20,000 copies, and I thought I'd have them in the trunk of my car for the rest of my life, and I'd be giving them out at Christmas. So, and then a funny thing happened. People began to read it. There's no other explanation for it. It came out in August of 1997. Didn't show up on a bestsellers list until November of 1997, nearly 4 months later. Almost 4 months later. And then didn't reach the top of those lists until April of the following year. So it was just this slow sort of people passing it around. I'm not even sure it could happen today, but it did back then. And that changed my life. I've never written a sports book since. I've my whole direction of my, interests and outside life and everything has changed as a result of that. But it was never my intention. As John Lennon famously said, life is what happens to you while you're busy making plans. And my plans were something else, and the world had other plans for me.
I had one friend named Cathy who was my fairy godmother, and she's a huge part of this story because she's the person that was the only person who watched my videos on YouTube. I did not make it on YouTube, but I'm glad YouTube existed for a place for me to put this music. And there were covers. I was just doing covers, literally. Jason Mraz, Counting Crows, Beatles. I don't know. I was just like sitting in my room alone crying, singing these cover songs and putting them out, and worked 2 different jobs, sometimes 3, just to pay my rent. I'm living in Hollywood. I left that husband. I was married for 1.5 years, and then like I left him and like just moved into this little shoebox apartment with nothing. I started over. I had the 4 book covers of the Twilight books framed on my wall. I have this photo. I can prove it.
That's insane.
Literally. I know. And so I was in this like transitional limbo, and Cathy was like, I'm going to come to LA. You tell your mom and dad, because my parents loved Cathy. She was older than me and sort of took care of me. And she was like, you tell your mom and dad, I'm going to LA with you, and I'm going to manage you, but we're going to write a letter to the universe, and we're going to call it The 10. And we're going to make 5 dreams and wishes for 2010. And I was less magical then. And I was like rolling my eyes, like, no way. It was like, get a pen right now. She was so bossy. So I write this down, and I still have this paper too. I do Cathy first. And so I'm like, The 10, Cathy, line, dash, I'm like, okay, what's your wish? And she goes, quit Diet Coke, stop dating assholes, get great bangs. These are her huge wishes and dreams. I think she said write a book, which was great because she ended up doing that. But and then her last one was give Christina magic motivational moonbeams, quote. So I'm like, okay, like I'm just dying, inside, but I'm like, whatever, I'll do it. So mine, I write, Christina, quit smoking. I smoked cigarettes. Mine said play 3 shows. Meet and marry Jason Mraz. At this point, I was just fucking with Cathy. I didn't believe any of this. Make a savings account with $20 a month. Like I literally had no money. And then my last one was bask in Cathy's magic motivational moonbeams. So I have to mention that because we write that. I come back to LA for New Year's. She comes with me the whole month of January. She's like, please play shows, please do this. And I'm like, no, I'm tired. I'm working. I'm just trying to survive. She asked me to come over now on January 30th or whatever of 2010. She just broke up with a guy she went on one date with after Match.com. She lit all the candles in her room because So You Think You Could Dance was very big at this time. And she lit all our candles and she's like, please come over and sing my favorite song, which was a song I wrote called Black and Blue. And I said, no, I just got home. It's like 10 o'clock at night. Like I'm already in my pajamas. She's like, no, please just come over in your pajamas. Like, please just sing the song. I already lit my candles. Like you have to, I just need to dance. And I was like, okay. So just being a good friend, I was like, whatever. So I go over to her apartment across the street. I'm in my PJs. She sticks a beret on my head, sticks me in the corner in the dark on a stool. I play the song called Black and Blue. She dances like she's on So You Think You Could Dance, but it's contemporary, emotional, emo dancing. I'm like, are you done? Do you feel better? Can I go to bed now? And she's like, yeah, I feel so much better. Thank you. And so she walks me out of her apartment and we're on Beechwood Drive in LA. We're looking at Capitol Records. We can see it. This is the part in the Disney movie where a shooting star just shoots by. She puts her arm around me. She's like, Chris, she's like, you just need like a real manager, like someone who knows people, like someone who can like really guide you. And I'm like, yeah, good night. Like literally just walk across the street, go to sleep. Not making this up in any way. I wake up in the morning to an email from Jason Mraz's manager. He had found me on Facebook. He says, hey, my name's Tom Gates. I manage a guy named Jason Mraz. I just saw a video of you playing a song and this girl dancing. I went and poked around your YouTube. I love all your covers. Can we meet? I mean, I think like the whole town heard me scream. Like if this is a movie, this is like me and Cathy. Cathy runs over. She's in her PJs. We're screaming. And like Cathy took a picture of me with the email. Because it's like, that's just, how does that happen? Like that is a lightning in a bottle moment, right? And so we freak out. He says, "Do you have a bio?" And Kelty and I are like, "Of course I do." And like, so we write a bio, we send it to him. I met with him the next day, his partner Ryan and me and him, and we loved each other instantly. Within 5 months, everything on that list came true. Everything on my, the 10 Magic Motivational Moonbeams list. I had signed a record deal. I had played 3 shows. I didn't marry Jason Mraz. I had to say I met him. I went to one of his shows. Within the next 2 years, we did a duet together. We toured together. We became friends. His manager was my manager. Then all of a sudden, the Twilight, I signed with Atlantic Records. They're like, we put out the Twilight soundtracks. And I'm like, yeah, I know. I don't care about Aretha Franklin. I saw the Twilight covers on the, records on the wall. They asked me to write a song for the wedding. I write 1,000 Years. It doesn't get picked for the wedding. People sort of remember it wrong. They think it was in the wedding. It's really in the credits. But because it's a wedding waltz, people just like intuitively knew my songwriting. They got married to it. I mean, my life just continued to be this like phenomenal chain of events where it just dragged me. I was the one going, it's not supposed to be me. I'm a writer. I don't want to be the performer. I'm not going to sing. I've never played shows. My very first time I ever played a show ever was June 6th, 2010 on the CBS morning show. I played Jar of Hearts. It was the first time ever in my life. And then the second show I ever played was Jay Leno. And then the third show I ever played was So You Think You Can Dance. They had me back after they played my song. And so those first 3 shows that I played, that I wrote on my letter to the universe, were on television. And I was like traumatized. I mean, like now I can just be like, oh, how cute. I was 23 and scared and threw up constantly, but like it was so scary and wonderful. It was a tornado and it was everything I dreamt of. But I want to say I also wrote it down. So I definitely believe in manifesting and showing up. I just said yes to everything. I was so scared, said yes to all of it, did it all.
I'm trying to get off step 1, but I have one more story before we get to step 2, which is that now I have like 15 minutes where people will stop, but I'm performing out on the street and this homeless guy is walking by and he says, "You all right?" I'm like, "All right." And he goes, You don't got hooks though. You need some hooks. You don't got any hooks." And I would say in my life, the only time that criticism really hurts or gets through is when it's true.
Yeah.
Like I can go sing a national anthem for something, or I can play a big TV thing. And then Twitter won't really affect me unless they're saying something that I know to be true. And then you're like, ouch. And so in this moment, this guy was right. I didn't have hooks. And I started really trying to write hooks, as well as, okay, so that happened. And then another thing happened pretty close to that, where it had been a full day and I'd been performing for like 8 to 10 hours just on the street, and it was fully ignored. For no one put $1 in my case, no one, not a smile, just a full ignore situation for a whole day. And I actually had a conversation with this guy where I was packing up my cart to go put it in my mom's minivan. And I screamed in the middle of the street, like, "Okay, now it's a little on you because I'm here and I've been here and I'm never going to stop and I will never leave. So if that's what you need to know from me, like, I'm never leaving. If you want my purpose to be that I just play to people that are coming to get jeans for the rest of my life, I'll do that. I'm not going to give up on this." And then I went home and wrote a song called Keep Your Head Up, which was like the song that took me off the street. Yeah. That's kind of the game. Like, do you get, this is what I try to tell. Like when I go into speak colleges, I'm like, do you get a little that I'm a little crazy? Like, do you see the crazy in my eye of what like edge you have to be leaning on to like push through this thing here to get to a place where you can be of service to other people? You first have to really stake claim to, I'm here for more than what I'm currently doing, and I will do almost anything.
I was in New York. I lived in LA at the time, originally from Houston, Texas, daughter of 2 immigrants from Nigeria who immigrated to create a better life for their children. They're not here anymore to see all of this, but everything I do is for their legacy. So I was in New York on a makeup gig and I wanted to work out. So I went down to the hotel gym. Hotel gym had like a busted treadmill and a hula hoop. So I quickly realized that I was not going to get any workout that meant anything in. So I decided to go to a local cycling studio down the street. And I'd heard Kelly Ripa talking about it a lot on her show, that indoor cycling was like the thing to do. It was becoming bigger at the time. And so I went, clipped in $40 later after the water bottle, the towel, the shoes, all the things, judging myself, thinking to myself, this better be good. I unclipped 45 minutes later and I'm in this state of euphoria. It's like I'm floating. I'm walking back to the hotel room and I realize that my walk turns into a skip. I notice that my skip turns into a hop and I'm just floating. I feel this wave of blue energy move through my body from my fingers to my toes. Cathy, it's like within a matter of 5 seconds, I saw my life's trajectory pass in front of me. I get chills every single time I've told this story, and I've told this story. It's in the book. Every single time I say it, it's almost like I relive it and I feel it. And it reminds me that this is all part of it. But I feel this wave of blue energy flash from my fingertips to my toes. And within a matter of 5 seconds, let me remind you, this is my very first cycling class. After my very first cycling class, I knew that I would be cycling for the rest of my life. Not only did I know that I'd be cycling for the rest of my life, I knew that I'd be teaching it. And I knew that I'd be teaching it on the world's biggest platform, able to touch thousands of millions of people. At the time, I didn't even know what Peloton was. And so, I get back to LA, I tell my friends this vision I have. They cry. They say, this sounds so right for you. This is what you should do. They've never even seen me cycle. So I'm like, why are you guys so sure about this plan? They said, Tunde, I don't know, but it sounds right. And I'll say, imposter syndrome set in once I got back. I don't look like an instructor, sound like an instructor. Who's going to want to look at me on a bike? Who's going to be inspired by anything that I have to say? All those things happened, right? I mentioned this idea of the fact that I was in this job that I no longer found rewarding, because I think it's important to note I was so uncertain. Everything seemed so unclear. I was in this space of immense, extreme doubt. I know now not to fear doubt. Doubt is uncomfortable. It doesn't feel good. But I don't think that doubt is a bad thing. I think that when doubt enters, it's our body's way of allowing in a course correction, whether it's relationship with your partner, relationship with your friend that you're doubting that friendship, relationship with a colleague, work, your job, your career. So I was in this space of doubt, doubting my career. I was in this space of uncertainty, which again, I think is not bad. I think that uncertainty, the beauty in uncertainty is that there's infinite possibility. When you don't know what's next, you don't know what's next. And so then anything can be next. Because I was uncertain, I opened my mind, opened my vision, which allowed me to receive what was coming in. If I thought I knew what was supposed to be next, I would have gone in with blinders and said, fitness? No. I don't have any experience in that. But because I was so open to receiving, I was able to take this divine download that hit me by way of a blue light. I could have easily said that I was daydreaming. I could have easily said I was hallucinating and dehydrated from that spin class. But instead, I received the message for exactly what it was. The moments that are here, I dreamed of that and I saw that. I said in the 3rd grade that I would write a book. When I was in 1st grade, my first thing that I've ever said I wanted to do, I said I wanted to be a teacher. My dad said, no, you don't. You won't make enough money. The joke there is that I was an educator in the cosmetic world, 15 years, and I teach or train every single day by virtue of a bike. So that happened. I was an overweight kid with low self-esteem. I didn't think that I was beautiful because I had dark skin and no one looked like me. I grew up in a predominantly white neighborhood. The Black kids that did go to my school, there were no Black girls as dark as me. My mother was light skinned. I just didn't see Black women. So one day I saw Naomi Campbell, who that vision changed the way that I saw myself. All of that to say, as this kid that's overweight, horrible at all sports, I would look at Nike and Nike athletes and think, wow. I would think of women. I would look at women in beauty campaigns and think, wow. Fast forward 2021, I become Nike's first ever trainer to be named Nike athlete. And I have a renewed contract with Revlon as one of the faces of Revlon. So I didn't ask for this exactly, but I envisioned it.
So finally, my first job was Restoration Hardware, a design merchandising manager there. And I worked at Restoration Hardware for a little bit, and then I lost that job. I think I've been fired from every job I've ever had. Chrissy Teigen and I have that in common. And then, I got fired from Restoration. I got fired from Restoration Hardware. Funny enough, the day that Tom Felicia, the original designer from Queer Eye, was filming in Restoration Hardware. So they fired me the day my predecessor was in there filming, and I just, I should have been like, big mistake, huge. I'll be back, and I'll be back as him. And so I then went to work for Bed Bath & Beyond. Worst job I've ever had in my life. I literally used to cry walking to work there. And then I started working for a company named Portico. Actually, in between Bed Bath & Beyond and Portico, I worked for an Italian linen company who brought me on to help them expand their brand in the US. Everything I tried to do, they fought me on it. And finally, they fired me saying I was an idiot. I'd never amount to anything. So that was a little smidgen of time. But luckily, one of the retailers that we manufactured for, Portico, I dealt with the owner all the time, and he loved me. And he was like, dude, forget them. They're crazy. Come work for me. So he hired me to run his store in Soho, which, to jump forward a little bit, the back of that store ended up touching the back of the store that in the future will have my name on it. So that was another like weird moment.
I'm going to cry. It's unbelievable.
So I started out managing that store, and then I went to corporate and I was a buyer, and then I developed their e-commerce division. And then in the end, I was a creative director of the company. Then they went bankrupt. And so I am like, crap, what am I going to do? Because again, like, it wasn't easy for me to get a job. I had a criminal background. I had no education. And at that point I had a good job. And I'm like, crap, I'm finally getting a little bit ahead in life. I'm finally not working jobs that I'm having to have 2 to 3 jobs at a time. And I'm like, crap, what am I going to do? I'm like, I can't keep working for other people. So I cloned the database that I had built the e-commerce division on. And I went online and I registered BobbyBerkHome.com, and I launched BobbyBerkHome.com. And I'm like, maybe I'll sell a sofa or 2 while I look for another job. I never thought it would be successful, but I sold more than a sofa or 2. I was one of the first online retailers out there selling modern furniture. There was no Wayfair. There was no Amazon. Well, there was an Amazon, but they were still selling books back then. I was one of like maybe 2 websites that sold furniture online, and people thought it was crazy, especially our suppliers. I started getting emails and letters from our suppliers telling me cease and desist. You don't have authorization to sell our products. Like, who are you? Portico did, but you didn't. And I like so many of them, I was like, please give me a chance. And they're like, no, we're not selling online. That's crazy. Who wants to buy furniture online? And all of our brick and mortar stores are going to drop us if they see us selling to these online retailers. So fast forward a little bit, I convinced some of them to continue selling to me. One of which I ended up being their largest US retailer in the future. So I was like, and so I had such a hard time getting good products because manufacturers didn't want to sell to an online retailer. That finally was like, fine, I'll think about opening up a brick and mortar store. And it just so happens that I ended up getting a call from the Italian guy that had fired me, telling me I was never going to amount to anything. And he's like, hey, so I see you have your own brand now. And I have a store in Soho and it's not doing very well. And you seem to be doing very well. Do you want to partner with me and buy out part of the company? And I was like, wait, what? I thought I was an idiot. I never amount to anybody or to anything. But I was like, oh, this is kind of like, I manifested this. I needed a store and here's a store. So he had, I think it was like $700,000 in debt, which to me at the time was like, it might as well have been $1 billion.
Right.
Because
So
that was
much.
that was just an astronomical amount of money. So he was like, all right, I will sell you half the company for $50,000 and you take on all the debt. And all my friends in finance were like, no, what are you thinking? No. But in my mind, I was like, yes, because if I can make this work and I get a store in Soho, do you know how many decades it takes brands to get stores in Soho? And once you're in Soho, you've made it. You are an international brand. So I'm like, if I can make this work, I can skip decades of work. And I was like, if I can't make it work, what's the worst that happens? I reinvent myself again. So I got my husband to get the credit line on his credit card increased. And I took out a $25 or $25,000 cash loan on his credit card. And I paid the guy $25,000 down and I took on all his debt. And then I turned his Italian luxury bedding store, which was not doing well, into an Italian luxury sample sale location. It was at Spring and Crosby, where my store was for about 10 years. Oh. And I had a guy that stood on the corner with a big sign, luxury Italian bedding, 90% off. And I paid that $700,000 in debt off in like 9 months. I always say I should have left that as a sample sale location because that girl was a cash cow. People loved it. And I did it by contacting all the suppliers that he owed all this money to and be like, hey, he's never going to pay you.
Yeah.
He screwed you. He sold the debt to me. Give me a credit line. Send me a little bit of product. And I promise you I will pay you back. So they gave me, like a $10,000 credit line. And they're like, all right, we'll send you some product. And I paid that off quickly. And then, more and more and more and more and more to where I totally paid them off. And then they ended up being one of my biggest suppliers. So as soon as I got that paid off, the store was still doing well. He started like taking money from the company. And he's like, oh, I own not the company now. I take the money. It was my worst Italian accent. I'm so sorry to all the Italians out there. And eventually I was like getting so angry because I was the one that got the company out of debt. I was the one that was making money, but he was taking so much money out of the company that I couldn't do with the store what I wanted to do with the store, which was really turn it into a Bobby Berk home. I knew he had a lot of shady tax debt. He was a shady dude. And so basically one day I sent him an email. I'm like, I know you have this, 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 and this. I need to never hear from you or see you again. Because you keep taking money from me. And if I do hear from you or see you again, and if you don't sign the company over to me, I'm going to turn you in for this, 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 and this.
Good for
and
you.
You're never going to be able to step foot back in the US again without going to jail.
Sister. That's it, man.
He signed the company over to me.
Guts.
That very day, I put up a Bobby Berk home banner and I turned it into my first Bobby Berk home store. And I had New York. I then opened one up in Miami.
This is a movie. It's a whole series of movies. It's amazing.
I say to women all the time, playing small has to be canceled because Mother Teresa herself said it takes a checkbook to change the world. And there is no good reason anymore. And there never was, but I can't think of a good reason why women are not leading and owning companies and being able to do exactly what you said so beautifully, which is those are the values. It is all of the gorgeous, glamorous pieces and then the philanthropic pieces too.
But I think, what we have to think, and I agree with you 1,000%, those are my values, right? That's just how my life turned out. But all of us have this unique journey that we've been on. And so many times we're afraid to show or tell people about what we think are failures or missteps or the things that we think went wrong. When actually, when we look back on all of those things, we will see that they were the bridge to get us to the next place we were going, that we had to go through those difficult times. And that's what makes you you. That's what makes you uniquely awesome and unique. And so instead of us trying to be someone we're not, there's so much power in vulnerability. There's so much power in saying, I'm not a college graduate. But you know what? That wasn't the path for me. If I hadn't had this store, I wouldn't be at the helm of an over $1 billion brand. I learned what I needed to learn. Not that I didn't love college, but at that time of my life, it wasn't my path to go on. And there were times I was ashamed when people would ask, where'd you graduate from? And I would be like, now I say, I got a master's in the School of Hard Knocks. Have you heard of it? Very proudly. But it took me a while. I mean, tonight, I'm actually teaching a class at the University of Texas. I'm a professor, Professor Scott. I founded a Women's Entrepreneurial and Leadership Institute at the University of Texas so that all women, not just women in business or entrepreneurship, can learn the entrepreneurial mindset. So you could be in any major, education, engineering, you name it, and you can learn about the entrepreneurial mindset in our institute. And I'm a college dropout, folks. So if that doesn't show you that anything is possible. I didn't find what I wanted in college. I wanted to take those courses, but I couldn't get into the business school. My grades weren't good enough in high school. So changing things is like the power that we have. And sometimes dreaming into it, it's amazing when you can get a group of other strong men and women. But I'm just going to say, when women hold hands and join forces, we're unstoppable.
Unstoppable.
When I walked up the stairs, I remember telling my friends, it seems like the angels have arrived after hard work. And when we were doing the meditation, I want to just share it publicly. I saw so much light, and I saw flowers just blooming around me. And then all of a sudden I saw Cathy and I sitting in Jerusalem together with so many women. And after that, I just cannot stop crying, because look at all of us. We all speak different languages. We all have different faiths. We all have different roads, but look at the congruence among all of us. And the bloodshed and the hatred and all this misery that we just put each other through for no apparent reason, just politics, does not make sense anymore. It does not. And, I literally felt like while you were there, this is what paradise would be like, without any borders, just bridges among each other. I know Cathy has been telling me for the longest time to start coaching. You can do it. You can do it. Even Colleen always, it has been there, but always I was like, the hijab, the brown skin, I'm overweight. And that just kind of got brushed off here. I was like, who am I to just step up? But just it's just, I cannot stop thinking about the hate that we see all around. Look at the breath work we did. We all breathe the same air. All of our hearts beat the same way. How can God just would have created differentiation between all of us? We are all the same. Listening to the stories, there's so many times where I was like, okay, so they experienced this too. This exact same thing happens in Pakistan or Pakistani culture or so many cultures I know. It doesn't make sense anymore for all this hatred. And I love you all. And every word and every hug, I think, I'm gonna cherish it for at least as long as I live. And after that, thank you so much.
In a 4-month period of time, I was, I had pneumonia. Ugh. And then I had this intestinal disease that's very deadly, called C. diff, that was eating my insides. to put it lightly. And then I got out of the hospital, and a few days later, my mother tripped and hit her head, and I had to fly home to take her off life support. And then my girlfriend and I split up right after my mother's funeral. And then I was diagnosed with invasive cancer. And again, that was in a 4-month period of time. And my head was spinning, and I couldn't quite process things. And then, all the while I'm a stand-up comedian. Although I have a sense of humor, I was a little backed up with my sense of humor. It was hard to get into real time with it and find any levity. But I had this show booked, and I had called the owner of Largo in Los Angeles and just said, I don't think I'm going to be able to do the show. I'm at a breaking point. I was just diagnosed with invasive cancer, and he knew everything that had happened previously or prior to that. And he said, I think you should keep it on the books just in case you decide you want to get on stage. And I was like, are you hearing me? I was so confused by his reaction. And then I just said, fine. I said, keep it on the books, but I'm pretty sure I'm not going to be there. And then as the days inched closer, which was only a couple of days, I did feel like maybe I will go on stage. And I was flipping back and forth between, do I just tell people what I'm going through and try and make light of it? And I talked to good friends of mine that are very well-known, well-respected comedians that had been in and out of the hospital dealing and holding my hand through all of this horror. And they were saying, do not go on stage and talk about this. This is not going to be helpful to your state of mind. They were trying to be protective. And I was like, okay, yeah, maybe I shouldn't talk about this. And I kept fighting it. I was like, it feels so weird though, to not mention it, because I was deathly ill. I was devastated to the deepest degree. And I didn't know how I could get on stage and just say, oh, I had a weird experience at a restaurant recently when all the other stuff was going on. And so I decided last minute, I am going to do it. And I am going to talk about what happened. And I was in the shower right before the show that night thinking, how am I going to walk on stage and get into all this? And then it came over me that it would be kind of funny and dark to just walk out on stage and say, hello, good evening. How's everyone doing tonight? I have cancer. Any birthdays? How's everyone's night? And so that's what I did. And it just exploded. People started tweeting and blogging and telling friends, and I just had no idea that it was going to explode the way that it did.
3 steps to create affirmations that will produce measurable, meaningful results and make you feel good, right? But I don't want to just feel good for the sake of feeling good. I want to feel good to an end, right? Number 1, affirm what you're committed to. Don't affirm something that's not true. Don't affirm what you want, because in life, we don't get what we want just because we want it. We get what we want if we are committed to it, and that's it. So if you want to be a millionaire, say, yeah, I'm committed to becoming a millionaire, right? You can even have the date, by this date. Here's my affirmation formula. Step 1, I am committed to blank no matter what. There is no other option. I am committed to running 52 miles no matter what. There is no other option. When I had cancer, I affirmed I'm committed to beating cancer and living to be 100 years old alongside Ursula and the kids. No matter what, there is no other option. And again, we get what we're committed to. And I was given a 20 to 30% chance of surviving. This was about 5 years ago. And when I would feel fear that I might die, despite doing everything in my power to survive, I thought, what if what if I die? Like, what if I don't make, what if I'm in the 70 to 80% of people that die from this? I would pull out the affirmations. I had them everywhere. They were printed on my bedside table. They were on my phone. They were with me at all times. I pull out the affirmations. Whenever I'd feel that fear, I would acknowledge this fear is not serving me. I'd pull out the affirmations and I'd go, I am committed to beating cancer and living to be 100 plus years old alongside Ursula and the kids, no matter what. There is no other option. I would read it with such conviction and such passion and such emotion that it became my reality. And eventually the fear disappeared. I didn't even really feel the fear anymore because I replaced it with that faith, right? So step one, affirm what you're committed to. Step two, affirm why it is a must for you. Why is it a must? Why are you committed? And for me, I like to list bullet points of the most compelling reasons why I am committed to that outcome. So going back to the affirmation, the cancer affirmations, I said, I'm committed to beating cancer for Ursula because I promised her forever and a day. I'm committed to beating cancer for Sophia and Halston because they need their dad's love. You're getting emotional, and I'm getting emotional. They need their dad's love, guidance, for the rest of my long life. I'm committed to beating cancer for my mom and dad because they don't deserve to lose another child. My sister died when I was 8. I'm committed to beating cancer for myself because I deserve to live a long, happy, healthy life. And I'm committed to beating cancer for the millions of people who are themselves battling cancer or some other disease and were not blessed with the knowledge or resources that I was. And they desperately need my leadership and guidance. And I'm committed to helping as many people as I can. So that was the fuel that powered the affirmation, right? That's as Simon Sinek says, right? It's the why that I'm committed to this because this, and this. And without step two, step one can fall flat, right? You can forget why are you committed to that thing that's so far outside of the realm of what you've done before. It's so far away from where you are now, right? It's so far away from what people are telling you is even possible. Step two is where you fuel that. And then step three is, what are you committed to doing and when? What are you committed to doing and when? That's where the rubber meets the road, right? And so I will do these things on these days. If you're writing a book, I will write every morning from 7 to 8 a.m. If you're trying to, run a marathon, I will train from 7 to whatever. If you're, when I was in sales, I will make 20 calls a day, 5 days a week from this time to this time, no matter what, there's no other option. And so when you follow that formula, you are programming your subconscious mind for success. You are programming your conscious behavior. You're literally setting your behaviors up for success.
People who are truly creative, they don't just work in music. They also work in fashion. Then they make their own vodka. Then they produce their own movies. Then they're building their own houses. Because once you turn on the faucet of creativity, it doesn't stop. This is how you make money because you're a match for it. This is abundance. Your abundance is your creativity. Your creativity is in your joy. Your creativity can only be turned on. You can't create from lack. If a deer is in fight or flight, it's not in repair. There's nothing creative happening. It can't, right? It can't go into creation mode. It can't even create cells in its body, right? So when you're in fight or flight, you cannot create. Creativity is actually the hook into abundance. It's not about money first. It's creativity first. How do you get creative? You got to be in wholeness. If you're in doubt and lack and shame and worry and you just keep playing there and you're like, I'm going to be honest with you, I play there every day, then there's nothing to talk about. We got to move that, right? Because once you're in a place where you start to feel jazzed and lit, you're going to get creative. Once your energy is creative, you'll be available for this out of the blue thing to hit you every single day. You'll be like, Kath, but it wasn't a 1-to-1 equation. I got creative, but then this thing happened, which was totally out of the blue. I'm like, no, but that's how it works. Because you've just created an opening for it. So we are meant to be creating, right? And you want to create an opening. You want to create the ability for this to come in. You want to allow this in. How can you help people reframe so that they actually see the world as it is, which is abundant?
If you know yourself, when you look at nature, every seed is the promise of thousands of earths. One seed has the promise of thousands of earths, right? When you were conceived, there were 300 million sperm for that one egg. And one of them made it, and that's you. but you see abundance wherever you look in nature. A human baby has 50 trillion cells or more. Every cell is doing trillions of things at the same time. A human body can regulate itself. It can make antibodies. It can make hormones. It can think thoughts. It can play a piano and make a baby all at the same time. That is abundance, okay? How does it do that? No, it's the biggest mystery that, you have 50 trillion cells, which is more than all the stars in the Milky Way galaxy. And they are doing in fact, if you had to count the number of things per second that every cell is doing, you wouldn't be able to do it in a lifetime. There's no algorithm for that. And yet every human being is an expression of that. And while your body is self-regulating, it's tracking the movement of stars and planets, because your biological rhythms are the symphony of the whole universe. Circadian rhythms, biological rhythms, gravitational rhythms. It's the ultimate example of the abundance of the entire universe in every cell of your body. Ultimate purpose in life is to know who you are. That's it. Nobody knows who they are. Say, are you a body? Well, which one? Fertilized egg, zygote? Which one? You don't have a body. It's an activity, perceptual activity. Then some people say, I'm my mind. So which one? You had a different mind when you were a teenager. Others say, I'm my personality. Well, hopefully that is evolving, unless you want to run for president. Then you can freeze your personality at 8 years of emotional development. So who are you? This is the most important question. Who you are is the infinite pretending to be a person. And that is the most joyous thing that can be experienced.